Perfect. So let's just jump into it. 12:03. I had something like I had something like a fire emergency that I need to put out at 12:30. So I'll be here for the first 30 minutes. I'm gonna do my segment. I'm gonna answer hopefully at least a couple of questions, and then we got Evan joined, which I wasn't expecting. We also got Ashley and Sydney. So you have like three of the most senior, most experienced people at Refine Labs that will be able to talk you through, like, get tactical, ask questions that are really important, and all of them will be able to help and participate for the last 30. Appreciate your understanding there, and let's get into it. So I was just there was a couple topics. There was a lot of the stuff coming from either the community or inbound is around annual planning. We talked about that before, and instead of me just sort of like talking off the cuff about things that you should do for annual planning, we're actually putting on like a specific event that either Ashley and or Sydney will lead on November 9th. And there's also a bunch of like vault resources around that. So instead of me just talking off the cuff, there's a bunch of more comprehensive and more structured material that I think would be more helpful to you all for that specific thing. But there was one thing that came up. I was on a podcast just now and I'm transitioning over. And the question was basically like the topic was a lot around our dark social like content strategy, but also include like what if you want to do influencers and podcasts and different things like that. And the person asked me, okay, so if I'm like a marketer or a marketing leader, what are the things that I need to do heading into 2024 in order to be able to have some of these changes actually take effect in 2024? The first recommendation overall is to run a data analysis. So look at all the data, connect it into pipeline sources like what's in the vault. Run what we used to be called split the funnel, but look at all the different campaigns inside of the pipeline sources and identify the lowest performers and the highest performers in terms of sales velocity and CAC. What you'll find is that a ton of money goes to super low sales velocity. A lot of marketing dollars specifically get spent on a lot of high volume MQLs that generate super low sales velocity and sales productivity. Then you have your places of like, hey, these things aren't working. Then you might realize based on that data analysis that our data model and operating model are off. We shouldn't be measuring MQLs, SQLs, SQOs anymore. We might need to think about it like we look at all these MQLs, 47,000 MQLs, the super low sales velocity where we spend most of our marketing dollars. It would make you question whether the MQL is the right thing to be optimizing for or not. So then you start to challenge like the data, the core KPIs that you measure across your go-to-market and your marketing team. And then from there, what you would do is you would collect customer insights. And you would collect customer insights as the first part of building your revenue strategy. So you have historical data coming in, and then you also have customer insights coming in, which then helps you build out a new revenue strategy. And if you took a bunch of customer insights about who the source of information that they trust, how they want to buy your product or technology, what steps they want to accomplish before they talk to a sales rep, have they ever heard of your company or brand before? Where did they hear about you? Have they ever heard about your main competitor before? Where did they hear about them? Who do they think is the category leader amongst these companies? And you can ask them a bunch of different questions and then use that as some of the core inputs of how you would build your revenue strategy. 100% guaranteed you would have a different revenue strategy if you use that process. And then once the revenue strategy is set using historical data and performance, as well as net new customer insights that you get primary market directly from the market, then you move into tech and tools, which includes attribution. And so inside of tech and tools, it's what things do we need to execute the revenue strategy effectively, and what tools do we need to measure the revenue strategy effectively. And when you look at it in this way, what you'll find is that you should build your attribution tools and strategy around the revenue strategy, not the other way around. That most B2B companies, if you take attribution and you put it next to KPIs, what happens is that the revenue strategy gets built around attribution, not around the strategy that you put in place. And so that maybe can be a little bit, especially without a visual, could be a little bit confusing to people. But if you realize why companies run and go and get 50,000 MQLs, it's because the strategy is built around the MQL and the attribution constraints of how we measure the MQL. And when you think about adopting a dark social content strategy that many companies have used very successfully, Clary and Hockey Stack are two that are doing it very well today. My company's grown on it a lot. You got Gong and Drift in the past. You have to think differently. So you say, okay, our customers are using LinkedIn and they're listening to podcasts and they trust these influencers. And so we're going to build a revenue and marketing strategy that involves those people. It could be in demand capture or demand creation or demand conversion. We're going to use that in the revenue strategy. And then what is the most appropriate way to measure whether that strategy is working or not is not by using digital touchpoint-based attribution. And so you would come up with a different attribution strategy if you put it in the right order of sequencing. And you would build something that's a lot more custom to your own strategy versus just using a out-of-the-box blanket. This is how we measure B2B marketing, and every company's been doing it for the past 10 years. And then lastly, you get into tactical execution, which is who are the resources, whether internal or external or agencies or consultants or freelancers, who are the resources that we need to execute with these tools and measurement to achieve the revenue strategy. And so just thinking about how attribution and KPIs impact your revenue strategy, I think is a huge unlock, whether you're an individual contributor or the marketing or revenue leader or part of RevOps. I thought Sydney, was there one more topic that we had on the docket? I kind of got what I wanted to cover on that one. Or no? Yeah. I mean, I'll just talk about it more broadly. I think that's a good approach. So, we've been doing data analyses with probably 20 companies, many of the Cloud 100, which are known as the most successful, most promising privately held SaaS companies in the world. And we've been doing a lot of this stuff with them. And whether you're in the Cloud 100 or not doesn't really matter. What does matter is that these companies spend a lot of money on things. And the money, like LinkedIn advertising, or $3 million a year on paid search, or the company that we're starting soon that spends $17 million a year on paid search. And they spend a lot of money in these places, and they say that they're data-driven, that they care, but when we go in and analyze their data, it's clear that they don't even have the right measurement set up to measure whether it's working or not. Paid search, we did it yesterday, $2.3 million a year on paid search. And we say, based on the way the data is being collected, it's clear that this channel isn't working and you need to reduce the budget by at least 50%. And they say, yeah, well, but we know that part of it isn't being measured right, and we don't know that this is being measured right, and things like that. And it's like, well, how can you spend $2.3 million a year without having an appropriate measurement set up? How does this happen? How is this allowed at a company? You're over here saying that your evangelist can't make a podcast and post on LinkedIn while you waste up to $2 million a year without knowing whether or not it's working at a company, especially in this economy at this time. It's consistently surprising to me how companies deploy investments and the constraints that they put around those investments. The constraints of, okay, we need it to be attributed to the channel, therefore it needs to be direct response. We need we need all this quote unquote tracking in place, and they never look at it beyond whether it was a lead or not. They never look at it to opportunity. The data isn't collected in the right way to look at it that way. They rarely look at it to closed won. I get the reports from companies that run paid search. There's not in the report does it ever say we spent this much on paid search and we got this much back in revenue. Why not? Why not? And it's surprising, especially given the amount of investment, how CFOs and CEOs and CMOs are not banging down on the team saying, we're the core places that we invest money, events and digital. Most all B2B expenses go to those two places. And within digital, 40 to 60% of the total budget on digital, and then that's just getting split between LinkedIn and Google. It's not that complicated. So you got two channels that you need to be able to measure effectively and know whether you're driving ROI. And if there's 3 million spent on Google search and 1 million spent on LinkedIn every year, and you can't measure either of them effectively, the weird thing is that most people will say that they can't, there's things wrong with their Google search measurement, and that's their excuse of why they're not able to clearly demonstrate ROI of that channel, which is the easiest channel to demonstrate ROI on the planet in marketing. And then over on LinkedIn, they actually can measure it properly. And it's clear that they're not generating any ROI with their like ebook lead gen strategy at $1 million a year. But then they'll put on top of it like the LinkedIn influence model or something like that to make it look like it's working when it's not. And so like as if you're if you're an individual contributor that's responsible for one of these channels, let this be like a sort of call out to you that like, if you want your channel to grow and you also want to grow as a business professional, you need to have a clear understanding of the ROI of the channels that you manage. And you need to make sure that you're using the best practices about how to measure the ROI of that channel objectively, not trying to slot in whatever things are going to make your channel work the best. Your job is to grow the business, not make your channel work the best. If your channel isn't working the best, you should be happy to send that money to a program that's a more effective or more higher ROI investment. And so being aware of these types of things. And then if you're a marketing leader and you're and you're evaluating your budget for 2024 and you spent $2.5 million on Google search next year and your team is asking you to spend 3.1 next year, they're just blanket increasing it by 30%, assuming that MQLs will go up by 30%. And you're not getting a report that says this is how much we invested and this is how much revenue came in and this is how it breaks down by campaign and ad group and keyword, and you don't have that type of granularity to decide how much budget should be spent on paid search, it's a irresponsible waste of the company's $3.1 million. And I think we need to have a lot more scrutiny, especially around the things that we accept as what B2B companies do. LinkedIn ads, Google search, trade show conferences, and field events are all things that inside of B2B companies, we accept that a large amount of budget will go on those channels. And surprisingly, we accept that we do them and we don't scrutinize the ROI nearly as hard enough. While all of the new things like posting on LinkedIn or running a connected TV ad or something like that, we spend $1,000 on that ad and we scrutinize it like it's our last $1,000, which leads us to saying all these new things don't work while we waste millions of dollars on things that we've accepted in our brain that B2B companies should do. We need to be like, as revenue leaders, need to be much more objective in how we're looking at these things, which then drive the major investment allocation. Cool. I'm going to jump off my soapbox here. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.